What is going on, everybody? Welcome to this brand new episode of the 715 Green and Gold Tailgates podcast as part of the Man Cave podcast that is brought to you by Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. Dan here with you as always. And, well, we got a couple things we're going to be talking about when it comes to the Packers. We're going to talk a little bit about, Isaiah McDuffie re-signing with the Packers. Thoughts on that move. Plus, some of the latest rumors and rumblings surrounding the Packers post the Combine. So let's jump right into it. Today is the deadline for teams to place franchise tags on players. It sounds like if you are a Vikings fan, the Vikings will not be placing the tag on Sam Darnold. So don't know if there's any Vikings fans out there listening right now, if they like the move, don't like the move and such, but don't think Green Bay will be doing that for anybody, including even Josh Myers. We know they're not doing it for Isaiah McDuffie. That's where we'll begin. Packers yesterday announcing that they have re-signed linebacker Isaiah McDuffie to a 2-year deal worth $8 million, could be up to $9.5 million. Now, there were a lot of Packers fans on social media that were complaining about the deal, saying it was too much, that it was too much money for Isaiah McDuffie. And you know, I understand where some of that stuff is coming from, or where that narrative is coming from. But I think when you really break it down, when you kind of look at it, it's like, okay, on average, for per year, it's $4 million per year. That's pretty much a cheap veteran contract. When you kind of break it down that way, it's a cheap veteran contract. This might even be when more details of the contract kind of come out. It might be a situation where it could just be a 1-year deal, and then, as Andrew Brandt will say, a 1-year deal, and then we'll see. I don't know. I haven't seen where the guaranteed portions are at with this deal. So, when I look at it, I look at it as a cheaper veteran depth kind of signing for the Packers. A guy that has been there for the last few years, is a special teams guy, started a lot of games. Is he a top 2 linebacker on his team? No. Do I still want Green Bay maybe to look at linebacker, perhaps in the draft? Yes. You look at last year, their depth was challenged with injuries to both Quay, to Edgerrin Cooper. So, I mean, the depth was challenged. And it's still a little bit unknown on Tyron Hopper what to expect from him this year. He was a 3rd-round pick last year. So I don't know what the expectation is for him this year. Is it just mostly special teams again? I'd like to see him get more of an opportunity and such. But that's where I feel like it's not that big of a commitment. You're not putting a ton of cash towards Isaiah McDuffie, and you're not putting a ton of years towards Isaiah McDuffie. So I don't have a problem with it. I don't think it's a lot of money when you kind of break it down in a per-year basis. It's a little bit, it's just kind of a cheap veteran type of deal out there. And he's a guy that can get you some snaps on defense, has played a ton of snaps on defense, and has played a ton of snaps on the special teams. But I do think this means, let me backtrack a little bit. Now I hope this means that, and it's nothing against him, but I hope this means that they don't re-sign Eric Wilson to a similar type of deal. I feel like it had to be one or the other. It had to be Isaiah McDuffie or Eric Wilson. Now, we can argue, we could debate on who they should have signed, whether it should have been Wilson or McDuffie to begin with. That could be a debate. But I feel like now, okay, they made the decision to re-sign Isaiah McDuffie. The Eric Wilson ship now is gone, has sailed. I think you have to roll with Walker, Cooper, McDuffie, Tyron, and then potentially maybe another draft pick coming up in this draft. And I know some of the naysayers will say, too, well, it's nickel base or nickel defense is kind of the new base. You only have 2 linebackers in there. Why invest, 2-year deal, $4 million per, when maybe a lot of times you only have 2 linebackers out there. Again, depth. Depth is not, I feel like a lot of times people take depth as a negative. They try to turn it into a negative when, no, it's a really good thing, okay? It's a really good thing to have that depth. So I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it. I just hope this isn't the only free agent signing that we're going to have when it comes to Green Bay, or the only moves when it comes to Green Bay when free agency starts next week. And I know one of the rumors that spread like wildfire on social media on Friday was the DK Metcalf rumor. There was a rumor out there that the Packers had an offer on the table for DK Metcalf. Then there was a rumor that, nope, it wasn't. There was no offer made, that it wasn't a thing, wasn't going to happen. So a lot of back and forth with the whole thing. We may never know the truth. I mean, okay, if the Packers do make that trade, or they do make a trade with that, then maybe, we got our truthful answer there. But you got a lot of he said, she said. You got a lot of agent talk through the media. You got, team sources trying to talk, through the media and such. I'd be more shocked if there wasn't maybe at least some conversation surrounding it. Because I think sometimes where there's a little bit of smoke, there's a little bit of fire. That's honestly what I feel like. So, but it all started on Friday with the reports. And again, a lot of the stuff happens in the draft, but it was Corbin Smith, Seahawks reporter, had reported that there was an offer on the table. But it sounded like the Seahawks wanted a lot. I mean, there was one report out there. What was it? The Packers' first-round pick, either Romeo Doubs or Dontavian Wicks, and then an early day 3 pick, which would be the 4th round or maybe even the 5th round for DK Metcalf. And then Packers would give DK Metcalf a new contract. So that's a lot. I will say, like, if the part where I don't know if I believe the report full on was the Packers offering. Now, I'm not saying this is what the report was, but if it's going to take a first round pick, either Romeo or Dontavian Wicks, and then say round 4 for DK, that's a little rich for me, especially considering Deebo just got traded for a 5th round pick. Now, I know DK's bigger, he's younger, he's more reliable, he's been healthier over the years. So that's a lot. That's a lot to give. Now, if it was like Romeo Doubs and a 4th round pick, okay. Because you're essentially, you're swapping out 2 receivers and you're sending a 4th round pick. That I could get on board with. The 1st round pick, for as much as we've kind of criticized Goody and his first round selections over the years, that just seemed like a lot. And I'd be shocked if Green Bay was able to or was willing to do that. I'd be shocked. Now, Matt Schneidman, later that day on Friday, who covers the Packers for The Athletic, said according to a source, there has been no contact or negotiations as of now between the Packers and the Seahawks regarding a DK Metcalf trade. Who's right? Who's wrong? Who the HE double hockey sticks knows at this point. But I got to imagine teams have at least talked to the Seattle Seahawks, have inquired about the availability of DK Metcalf, because it makes sense for teams to inquire and ask on it. Because he has a huge cap hit this year because he's got 1 year left on his deal. Because the Seattle Seahawks have Jackson Smith-Njigba and Tyler Lockett on the roster. That's the recipe of, like, maybe this guy's available. So I'd honestly be more shocked if a team didn't at least inquire with General Manager John Schneider from the Seattle Seahawks about the availability for DK Metcalf. And sometimes those things turn into the telephone game. What is actually the truth and what we actually hear, maybe a little polluted. Maybe got a little bit mixed up in the messaging in that game of telephone. But I'd also be lying if I said, as a Packers fan, I would not be. I mean, I would be insanely excited and pumped if somehow the Packers landed DK Metcalf. That would get me excited, and that would get me pumped up. We've got free agency starting next week. And if you're a Packers fan, I mean, we've been talking about it all offseason, some wish lists. Would love for Green Bay to go after this guy or to address this position. I mean, it's a talking point. And in the past, it was kind of a talking point that went nowhere. It's like, you know, the running joke for a lot of writers or reporters that would cover the Packers, they'd go on vacation the first week of free agency because they knew Green Bay would not do anything in that first week. And that's kind of changed over the last couple years, ever since Brian Gutekunst has been the general manager in Green Bay. Can't necessarily say that now for every year. It's been some years it's been quiet because of dead cap situations and salary cap situations. But this has definitely been a season, you know, after the regular season was over with, you had Goody say that proclamation, I think it's time that we start competing for championships. And we see the talent for the rest of the teams in this division, in the NFC North. And for a lot of Packers fans, you hear your GM say that, and you hear the talent, or you see the talents in this division. And it's like, all right, we got to hit some home runs in free agency. We're still a couple players away. I really hope my team, the Green and Gold, can be active in free agency. Or going to do something in free agency, something similar to last year when they signed Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs. Well, according to our good friend Rob Demoski, who covers the Packers for ESPN, he had an agent tell him at the Combine last week that, quote, the Packers are going to be big players in free agency this year. Now, that's an agent's point of view. It's maybe it's a particular agent that has already had some discussions with the Packers. You know, all on the up and up with the whole legal negotiation period and such. Or maybe this was more of an opinion from this particular agent. But when you hear that, I mean, when you hear that as a Packers fan, it gets you a little excited, right? That you got agents telling a Packers reporter that Packers are going to be, quote, major players in free agency. So, I mean, the countdown is on now. And I think, you know, I'll admit it. I heard that. I heard Rob say that. And I'm like, it's hard not to keep your emotions in check. It's hard not to not be excited about that. It's hard to not have, you know, all right, your expectations just got a little bit higher. That you're like, all right now, this is what I'm expecting. I'm expecting on March 10th when that legal negotiations period starts that we're going to get a couple of reports out there that the Packers locked up, whether it's Milton Williams or maybe it's a corner or maybe it's another edge rusher or something out there. I hope I'm not disappointed. I hope I'm not getting I'm probably getting my expectations too high or my hopes a little bit too high with this thing. And I know the Packers have been used as pawns before in you know, agents, negotiations and such. But I'm falling into it, man. I'm definitely falling into the let's go. Let's have a good free agency. I know free agency doesn't win you anything when it comes to the regular season, but I think I speak for a lot of Packers fans that we want to see at least a couple moves made in free agency, a little bit higher, no offense, but a little bit higher than re-signing the likes of Isaiah McDuffie. I like the Isaiah McDuffie signing, but I think we want a little bit more, some like impact players, starters, difference makers, that sort of thing. We know it's not going to be T. Higgins. That's not going to be out there. He's getting a tag. But a lot of the positions that were mentioned, again, Rob mentioned corner, defensive line, positions that we have talked about all offseason. Heck, even into the season. DJ Reed, a corner, was mentioned as a free agent target. And that's a guy that we haven't talked a whole lot about for Packers fans. And I'd be curious to get your thoughts on it, Packers fans. What do you think about a guy like DJ? Now, DJ Reed would be a little bit of an opposite kind of acquisition from the Packers in terms of when you look back at their history. They've always had kind of a minimum in terms of the physical traits for a corner. Okay? Around 5'11", 6 foot. They like kind of that as a base for their corners for height-wise. And Reed's smaller. He's about 5'9". Okay, he's 5'9". Yeah, this was by the way, going back to the full quote, this was from Rob Demovsky on ESPN Milwaukee. One agent told me specifically, your team, the Packers, is going to be a player in free agency this year. This agent was left with the impression that the Packers were going to be in the cornerback, defensive line, and receiver market. One name that was mentioned to me, one guy that I had heard to keep an eye on for the Packers, was DJ Reed. So, DJ Reed, according to this agent, told Rob Demovsky that Reed could be in the $14 to $15 million per year range. And Rob said, quote, that seems like that might be a fit for the Packers. Now, where this could be a little bit different in terms of Packers history is what we mentioned, the height. DJ Reed's about 5'9". He's a little bit of a smaller corner. Does that concern you at all if you are a Packers fan? Are you still of the notion? Are you still of that same thought process? I think if you had started back with Ron Wolf and such, that I'd like my corners a little bit taller, around that 6 foot. Reed's just a little too small for me. Now, Reed has played in 7 seasons already. He's not just been around for a couple years. He's played for 7 seasons. Still only 28, though. He was with the Jets for the last 3 years. Obviously played in a defense similar to what the Packers have played in. Robert Saleh the last couple years, right, with the Jets. Now I'm sure that there's probably going to be other suitors for DJ Reed. Maybe with the 49ers with Robert Saleh over there. That could be one. He's going to have suitors all across the board. And Jeff Hafley, too. Just really quick, Jeff Hafley did coach him. Was his position coach because DJ Reed was with San Francisco his first couple years of his career, 2018 and 2019. And that was when Jeff Hafley was there as the secondary coach, defensive backs coach. So Hafley is familiar with him. And he was a 5th-round pick by the 49ers. Was put on waivers a couple years later. Seattle claimed him. Ended up kind of resurrecting his career. And then in 2022, he signed that 3-year, $33 million contract with the Jets and has been pretty solid the last couple of years. So it wouldn't be like he's coming into a completely different style of defense. Would that be kind of an issue and such? I think you put that. I think you put that into consideration here, that he's got experience with a very similar style of defense. So I'm intrigued with that. I'm intrigued with the DJ Reed signing here because I feel like, first of all, would they view him mostly as, when you look at the height, would they view him mostly as a slot corner or as a nickel corner and primarily play him at that spot with Carrington and Keyshawn on the outside? Would they pigeonhole him that way because of his height? When you look at the depth chart, let's look at, for the Jets last year. And they were a 4-3 defense too. Okay? DJ Reed was considered the right corner, outside corner. I don't think you can pigeonhole him into just saying, oh, he's 5'9", so he's going to play the slot corner. You hear that a lot with receivers, too. Like, Jaden Reed got that talk a lot. And Jaden Reed's a guy, when you looked at college in Michigan State, he was a guy that played outside quite a bit. And I think we got to start moving away from that. Just because, and I get it for some. Some guys, whether it's like a Mike Hilton or such, smaller corners, smaller receivers, they're better suited to play in that slot role, that nickel corner role. But DJ Reed's got experience playing on the outside. And you know what? When they get into a nickel formation, maybe he slides in. You see receivers do that all the time, whether it's JJ or St. Brown in Detroit. They slide in inside. The game has changed and evolved over the last few years where you don't just have a nickel corner and that's all they play. Or you just don't have a slot receiver and that's all they play. Some still do, but offenses have adapted, defenses have adapted. So I would be surprised. It's like, okay, let's say Green Bay signs DJ Reed. He's going to be a starter. He's probably going to be a starter with Keyshawn on the outside. But when they get into that nickel, he slides into the inside. I'm intrigued with a guy like DJ Reed. If you bring him on, I look at the division here now. And who are the teams that Green Bay has to go up against in the division? It's Minnesota, it's Detroit, and it's Chicago. And two of those teams, for sure, have guys that could, and they do, easily slide into that slot role and could kill defenses. JJ, Justin Jefferson. Heck, Addison can do it for Minnesota. And St. Brown. And I think when you've put those guys in those positions, in the slots, they're doing it to create mismatches. And right now, it is a mismatch in the favor for Detroit and Minnesota if they do that against Green Bay. Maybe Javon Bullard ends up being a very solid, very good nickel slot type of corner. But I'd rather have DJ Reed right now in that situation. So I think, when you hear the height thing, is he going to have a mismatch if he's paired up against Roma Dunze, who's 6'3"? Of course. But don't put yourself in those positions. So I'd be all about a DJ Reed signing if that's the direction they go, especially in a $14, $15 million range. But we'll see if that actually happens. It's going to be probably a little bit of a bidding war. And I think even if they do sign DJ Reed, if they do sign him, I wouldn't necessarily shut the door on them drafting a corner early in the draft. Again, I think you got to look at their defense. You got a defensive coordinator who is a secondary coach by trade. And I think you still want some more depth at that spot. You still want some protection over there. Because after Carrington and after Keyshawn, then you got Javon Bullard, who's a safety nickel guy. Kalen King's over there, which I know last year we were all, intrigued with him, but we didn't get to see him. So there's not a whole lot of, a little bit of unknown surrounding him. Even if they go and get a corner in free agency, I would still expect corners probably going to be fairly high on the draft board for Green Bay, just to get that depth back up there. And you got to protect yourself. What if Keyshawn just doesn't work out as a number one corner, or takes a step back, or Carrington Valentine doesn't continue to ascend, or you got injuries? You want options. The Reed contract, though, will be a little bit interesting because he is 28 years old and he has been in the league 7 years. What's What's the structure of that contract look like? What's the length of that contract going to look like? But I mean, let me throw this out to you, Packers fans. So the two rumors that are floated out there the most is DK Metcalf and DJ Reed. If by this time next week or later next week we find out Green Bay is traded for DK Metcalf and has signed DJ Reed in free agency, I mean, how you feeling? You're feeling probably pretty damn good, right? You're probably like saying, hey-o, now we go. And without trading the first-round pick. You're probably feeling pretty good. You're probably still saying, love them, but we still need a defensive lineman or a defensive end. And I would agree with you. I would 100% agree with you. You filled a couple of holes, a couple of big holes, but they haven't quite filled the biggest hole yet. Now, I think if somehow they pull off what they did in, was it, 19? Yeah, 2019? When they got Preston, Zadarius, Adrian Amos, and Billy Turner all on the same day. If they go out there and do something similar to where they get a defensive lineman and then a wideout and then a corner all in the same day or within a couple days, holy moly, you're going to have an excited fan base, and that draft might just get a little bit more chaotic for Packers fans because they're going to be all pumped up, baby. And I'll be one of them too. Who am I kidding? I would 100% be one of those guys.